Okay, welcome back everybody to Principles of Banking. This time chapter 12. We're coming down to the wire here. And this chapter will kind of go pretty quick. A lot of this stuff you've probably been exposed to before, but I'll do my best to highlight information that may be new. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Every bank is tasked with protecting their customers' information. And the first step to that is the bank is required by the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act to have, at the very least, a reliable information security program in place. And banks are subject to strict guidelines and penalties for data breaches, and they really need to do a good job of identifying risks when it comes to data and staying on top of their ability to protect their customers' information. So some of the general security features you've probably seen are things like automatic session expirations, where you're on your online banking site and your wife called you from the other room and now you've been logged out, and that's the automatic account logout too. Sometimes that would be for if you enter the wrong password too many times. You'll be locked out of your account and you won't be able to get into it. Things like direct deposit and e-alerts, online bill pay, and online statements make managing your account's activities more easy and allows you to be on top of it a little bit more. And there's other things about unique security numbers and passphrases. The banks try to use those to insulate risk and to stay on top of potential problems. And then is the emergency preparedness. To protect the data, the banks are required to be prepared to respond to any kind of breaches and to have backup servers and things like that and defensive actions in place to prevent and deal with harm resulting from any sort of data breaches. So moving on here, one of the things that banks need to do is, they're required to do this by law, is to identify their customers. Now the U.S. Patriot Act lays out some specifics when it comes to identifying customers, and this is the aforementioned Customer Identification Program for new accounts. The intent was to stop terrorists from using American bank accounts, but it also provides another layer of security for customers' information in that somebody else cannot get at it by pretending to be you. So the identification requirements are placed in there by the law, and the bank has to verify that and compare it against available records. Accessing methods. So the accessing methods are becoming more and more sophisticated. Sometimes when you set up online stuff or over the phone, you may have a password or a passphrase. They may ask you a question, what was the name of your first dog, and things like that. Now they're even getting into physical characteristics like voice recognition. In fact, when I worked at Wells Fargo, the only way to access the internal systems was through voice recognition software. You had to enter your employee number and then you had to repeat a phrase and it could recognize your voice. The other biometric ID methods are sometimes on the mobile apps now. You can use fingerprint scanning technology and voice recognition. Okay, and there's several kinds of fraud that are out there and people trying to commit fraud, and these are the reasons that we take these extra precautions. Now, one of these methods is becoming more popular is to use caller ID manipulation, or sometimes known as spoofing, where the incoming call looks like it's coming from somebody that you know or a reliable source, and companies can often, or not companies, but fraudsters can often pay for a service to say that they are someone else. So it'll show up, it'll say Bank of America is calling you, and you answer the phone and they immediately start fishing for personal information. Always a good idea in that situation, if it ever happens to you, is say, well, I'm going to hang up and I will call back on the published bank number. You hang up, go to the bank's website and call back, and that's the easiest way to avoid that problem. Pretext calling is sometimes bank employees get deceived by this one, where people call in and they pretend to be an account holder and try to get information. And then, of course, your typical online fraud schemes where people call in, or no, they don't call in. They may email you phishing for information. They may do farming, which is another one where they send you to a website that looks like a bank website, ask you to input your information. And then the advance fee fraud is a very interesting one. This is one where people receive a check in the mail. It says they've won the Canadian lottery. You need to cash a check and send us $500 to process the rest. And it's a fraud. It's always, always a fraud. You wouldn't believe how many people go into the bank thinking that they've won some foreign country lottery, and we say, well, did you enter the lottery? Do you have your ticket? What makes you think that people will get checks from businesses or supposed businesses that say that this is their paycheck for doing secret shopping? And I said, well, did you apply to become a secret shopper? Well, no, I didn't, but I could use the money. You can see where this could be a very big problem. A newer problem that's coming up a lot in the current environment is something called elder financial abuse. And this is where somebody who is aged and old is taken advantage of by either family members or friends who they're relying on to help manage their finances. Typically, I'd say most often in my experience, these types of situations are with people's very own children. It's a very, very sad state of affairs, and very hard for a banker to know what to do, because the children may be taking care of an elderly or senile parent, and they're not always getting their permission to do certain activities. And sometimes salespeople, vendors, contractors can do this too, try to take advantage of the elderly. So what can customers do? This is a very simplified presentation today, so these are not the only things you can do, but these are some of the most important things you can do. Manage your device and computer security, and manage how you use it. Limit access of third parties or friends or family. Manage your passwords effectively. Passwords are a real pain in the neck, I got to tell you nowadays. I mean, at work I have to change my password every month, and I can't. I'm at home, I'm trying to get on to pay the electric bill. I can't figure out my darn password is. So anyway, that's a real headache, but it's also important. And then the other thing to do is to check with your credit report. Get an annual credit report every year and make sure the information contained is accurate. This way you can catch potential problems before they become huge. And lastly, of course, are the laws and regulations, just like every other chapter. Now, most of these are really about guidelines on what sort of things the law requires you to do as far as safeguarding information and guidance on internet authentication. But one that's interesting are the red flag rules. Now, red flag is a system which the government flags certain people's and businesses accounts, and they have warning signs of identity theft. The program spells out, so the reporting agencies have the flags, and then the bank has to have a red flag program on what to do if they come upon these flags and how to respond to potential issues. Well, that's pretty much it for this one. We'll go ahead and leave it there. Of course, review the book, and there's additional stuff in there. And the course is almost through, so I hope it's going well for you. It looks like from the grades that it is. So let me know if there's anything else I can do, and we'll talk again soon.